Hi and welcome to the Unquendor Guitars workshop for another part in a video series where I show you how I build my guitars. Last week I prepared the fretboard and glued it to the neck blank, and yeah, this week I'm going to start shaping the neck. First rough cutting out the overall shape and then going over to some rasps and files to shape the neck. Yeah, but before I'm going to do that, please consider leaving a like if you like these videos and subscribe to my channel if you already haven't. Yeah, it helps me to reach a broader audience here on YouTube, and I would really appreciate if you took the time to just click on these two buttons. So with that out of the way, let's get to work. In a previous episode I've already marked out the side profile of the neck, and this is what I'm going to cut out on the bandsaw right now. I'm going to start by cutting out the rest of the headstock, and as I showed you in a previous video, I've designed my headstock in such a way that when I hold it flat to the table of the bandsaw, the saw should be perpendicular to the neck, and this helps for me cutting the volute. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but now the blade of the bandsaw is perpendicular to the center line of the neck. I've made a little mark here, and this helps me a lot when cutting out the shape. As you can probably see, this line is almost nice perpendicular to the center line, and yeah, it just helps. Small things. So I try to cut as close to the line as possible, and you can see the heel almost perpendicular, and although it's a bit of an awkward cut, almost perpendicular, not quite, but there's a fix for that. We're going to clean this up. So the next step is to smooth out the back of the headstock and sand it to the desired thickness. To do that, I'm going to use my oscillating spindle sander once again, just in the same way I did with the fretboard. But now, for it to ride along the fence, the fretboard is interfering with the fence, so I'm going to stick just some filler material, in my case a piece of plywood or multiplex, to the front side of the headstock using the masking tape and super glue trick, so I can ride this side of the filler block against my fence. Yeah, nice and secure. Let's go to the spindle sander. Similar setup as what I used for thicknessing my fretboard. I have to double check if the sanding drum is perpendicular to the center line of the neck, and it looks like it. It's fairly close, so that's good. And you can use the diameter of your sanding drum to determine the radius of your volute. If you use a smaller radius sanding drum, you get a smaller radius for the backside of your volute. But I like to start with the biggest one. You can always go a bit smaller. Look at the end result. Nice, thin, smooth. Yeah, I think using this method is by far the easiest and, in my opinion, the best way to do a job like this. It's, all it takes is patience, really. Yeah, just make sure your setup is correct, so your fence is nice and perpendicular, your filler block is glued on the headstock correctly, and then it's just a matter of patience. Just take the smallest amounts off each pass and you should end up with a nice thin and smooth headstock and a nice radius for your for the volute. If you want to do a fender style headstock, so instead of an angled headstock, a flat headstock, basically something like this going up to the nut, you can do the exact same thing, only the other way around. Just push it into the sanding drum and you get a nice straight flat headstock. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, the next job is to start working on the actual neck profile, and I like to make sure this is as flat and even as possible. So that's what I'm going to do next. Usually there is some natural tension in the lumber you use for your neck blank and the neck blank itself. And when you remove a lot of material from your neck blank, in our case while using the bandsaw, there's always a chance your neck blank will bow or cup when you've removed a lot of material. And that's why I always leave my necks to rest for a couple of days before I start doing the neck carve. This way I can make sure the wood has set and I can check if my neck is still nice and straight. So when you clamp down your neck, make sure you don't introduce any new stresses, so make sure it doesn't cup or bow, so your jig has to be nice and level as well as your neck. So, and don't overdo the clamps, just make them tight enough that it holds the neck in place. And the first thing to do is redraw the lines for the neck thickness and level the surface on the backside of the neck somewhat. I'm going to use a Shinto rasp or saw file or rasp to level out the centerpiece of our neck. So to help me figure out what facets to cut in my neck, I made this little diagram. It's for a D shape, somewhat more of a C shape, a perfect C, that's a perfect part of a circle, so it's perfectly rounded, and this one is double, so you can forget about this one. Here you can see for a perfect D shape, I use only center to center of midpoint to midpoint relations between my facets. So the first facet I'm going to cut is from the center line of the side of the neck to the midpoint on one side and the underside of the neck, and then keep adding midpoint to midpoint facets, and this gives me a more of a D shape. Like I said previously, when I want to go for a more C shape, so more of a perfect circle, I start with a 45-degree angle starting from the back side of the neck. So this is the center line. I divide one part in half and draw in a 45-degree angle, and if you don't know, it means this dimension is equal to this dimension, so these two are equal, and you get your 45-degree angle for your first cut. And then I'm using third relationships, and that's, I measure out this section here, divide it by 3, and use 1/3 of that measurement for this line, and to the midpoint of the facet I just made with the first cut. And I'm going to repeat it as much as needed until I get almost a perfect round shape, and then I round it over, and usually it takes just 3 facets to come up to this shape. For this neck I'm going to use a D shape because that's what I like. So I'm going to draw out some lines on the back of the neck, and hopefully this makes more sense. If you have any questions regarding faceting, or you like to see a more in-depth video on these diagrams and how I came up with these diagrams and how to use them, please let me know in the comment section down below, and I will answer them in the comment section, or I will make an entire video on this topic, because I found that there are not much in-depth videos on this topic on the internet yet. So hopefully this makes sense, and I think it will when I draw them out on the actual neck. Yeah, here we have our neck. I hope this angle works for you. It's hard for me to set up shots like this, these overhead shots, so I hope this works. Yeah, I'm going to try and explain the best I can what I do to shape my necks, so you can use the same process, or if you have a better process or another way of doing it, please let me know in the comment section down below. I like to learn as well. So first thing I do, mark out some fret positions. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7, 9. 10, 12. 17. Let's do the same thing on the other side. Yep. So first I'm dividing my neck into a couple of sections. It doesn't really matter. I have my own preferences for using the first, the 7th, 9th, 1st, 5th, 9th, 12th, 17th and the last fret before the heel starts. Now we have to find the center line of our neck. Center line. And let's see. This way. And using our diagram, I know I have to find the centers. So the midline between our new center line and this side. So I have to draw in another line lengthwise on the neck, the centers for these lines, and the same goes for the sides. So I have to find the center of the thickness at each point as well. Again, protractor. So it's 22, somewhere around 11. I hope you guys can see these lines. Might be hard to see. So I divided this side of the neck in two, using another line. Let me continue and do the other side, and I'll be right back. So the other side of the neck is also marked and ready to be shaped, and I went ahead and I divided the side of the neck in half as well, not taking the thickness of the fretboard into account, so only in this case the maple. I also divided it in half. So this is the section I'm going to remove. Same on the other side. Mostly using my Shinto rasp and maybe some other tools, other files, rasps. And I'm going to connect this line with the line on the side and keep it as nice and straight and flat as I can. The more precise I'm at this stage, the better the neck will end up. So this will take some time, so I'm going to speed this up. Yeah, and I'll get back to you when I have both of the facets done. While you're making your facet, you have to keep adjusting your angle of attack, or the angle at which you cut your facet, to have the equal distance between both lines at all times. It's very hard when you already at one of the lines and you're still way off on the other side, to get it nice and even, you will most likely end up with a rounded shape, because it's very human to do your focusing on one line and you're going to round it over. But you really want a nice and flat surface for your facets, and that's why you sometimes see me switching tools, and that's not because one tool cuts coarser or cuts faster than the other. It's to change up the scratch pattern. When working with rasps and files, you get a scratch pattern on the facet, and switching those tools up means you change the scratch pattern, and you can tell exactly where you're cutting and what needs, if you have any high or low spots. That's one of the reasons you see me switch tools, sometimes even to a very fine rasp or very fine file, just to change up the scratch pattern so I can see better what I'm doing. And the last pass you'll see me use a cabinet scraper, and that gives me a nice straight reference edge to check if my facet is real smooth and nice and straight. So let's continue. So I went ahead and drawn in the next couple of lines for our second facet. And the first thing I did was taking the center line on the face we just created, so in between our original two lines, take the center, and take the center on the leftover part of the side of the neck, mark them all out, draw a line, and this is going to be our second face we're going to create, so our second facet. So we're going to connect this line with this line, and same on the other side. So now it's time for the final two facets before we can start rounding over. Next thing we have to do, we have to divide what's left of this first face. So in between the first line we've drawn in and the line for the facet we just created. So we have to divide this in half, and the leftover flat bit of the center of our neck has to be divided in half and faceted once again, and then we can start rounding over. I've got the rough shape of the neck done, the facets are all in, and before I start rounding over the neck, I'm going to do the rough shape of the volute. I've drawn in half a circle by hand, and I'm going to use again files and rasps to make the rough shape of the volute. So I get a nice transition between the back of the neck and the volute. So to start off, I'm going to knock off these two corners. And you can't see it, but here's my line, and I'm going to blend it in with the rough shape of my neck. The only way to check, or one of the only ways to check your volute, is just by feel. If it's such a complex shape, you have to feel if it's correct, if there are any bumps or humps or dimples. And really the only way you can do it is by feeling. Or the only way you really can do it is by touch. Alright, this will do for now. It's time to round over the entire neck and then sand it. And with the sanding I can always adjust the volute some more. But very happy this far. At this point I usually would like to have my client present in the workshop so I can adjust the neck shape according to his or her preferences and what he or she likes. So I can shape it a bit, hand it over, they can feel it, take it back, shape it some more until we're both satisfied. So yeah, let's start blending in the edges created by the faceting. And it's quite an easy job. I've got my basic neck shape done. I hope you can see it, but we've got a nice little T-shaped neck. That means the edges are somewhat steeper and the belly or the back of the neck has a flatter section in compared to a perfectly rounded or a C-shaped neck. Yeah, and I don't use any templates. I make my necks one at a time, usually customer specific, so there's no need for me to have any templates for the neck. And yeah, to get the last details, you can really only do it by feel, and I constantly am touching and feeling along the neck. If there's any rough edges or if I find a section too steep or too rounded, I can adjust it. For example, the transition between the volute and the neck and the headstock, I like to be it as smooth as possible without any noticeable edges. So I'm fine-tuning that, and it only takes a couple of wipes with the sandpaper usually, really smoothing out the neck profile. So yeah, I'll be fine-tuning the neck somewhat more in the next hour, I think, and I'll see you when I'm done. This is all the time I have for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. It turned out to be more of a tutorial than anything else. For some reason I like explaining and teaching, and yeah, I really enjoyed making this video. Although it was never my intention to do tutorials on my YouTube channel, but yeah, it turned out, and I hope you like it. I did, I know I did. I like teaching. It's part of my day job as well, giving training courses. So I hope you like this format. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think. And yeah, we ended up with a very nicely carved, even neck. It's very comfortable, very nice D shape. Yeah, and it's ready for the next step. Of course, I still have to fine sand it and carve the heel, but that will be done when the neck is glued to the body, so I can blend it into the body. In the next episode I will sand in the radius in the fretboard, and of course do a special inlay for this video series. I decided to make a special one-off inlay for this video series to show you in next episode, so keep your eyes out for that one. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Leave a like and a comment if you did, and I hope to see you in the next video. But until then, have a nice one.